Let's imagine our survival in this big old galaxy starting on Mars. Hollywood movies always picture heroic astronauts keeping their perfect bodies in space. That is just a throwaway fantasy we use to comfort our minds. Becoming an interplanetary species demands something entirely more disturbing from our biology. Our future Martian settlers will never be muscular warriors conquering new frontiers. They will literally morph into completely deformed creatures barely resembling modern humans. This grim transformation remains the ultimate hidden cost of escaping our planet. Are we actually prepared to sacrifice our human identity for cosmic survival? Picture Caleb, a 22-year-old student sitting inside a quiet Stanford room. The glowing computer screen illuminates his exhausted face during the late hours of midnight. He is feeding complex prompts into an advanced artificial intelligence image generation software system. His ultimate goal is to visualize his future great-grandchildren living proudly upon Martian soil. Like many young Americans, Caleb grew up idolizing astronauts and dreaming of magnificent cosmic conquests. He imagines a brilliant future where his own bloodline expands across this big old galaxy. He firmly expects the sophisticated software to produce a muscular hero conquering the red dirt. He anticipates seeing a proud pioneer wearing a sleek spacesuit looking boldly towards the horizon. The loading bar slowly crawls across the bright monitor while his heart beats slightly faster. He genuinely believes that human biology will easily triumph over the harsh environments of space. But here is exactly where the entire simulation gets incredibly interesting for our young dreamer. The screen finally flashes green before revealing a startling image that shatters his grand illusions. The generated face staring back at Caleb does not belong to a handsome Hollywood conqueror. Instead, he sees a bizarre creature possessing abnormally large eyes and dark orange leathery skin. The physical structure appears incredibly fragile with painfully skinny bones protruding beneath the thin tissue. This digital descendant looks far more like an alien than a recognizable human family member. Caleb leans closer to the monitor while a sudden wave of chilling emptiness washes over him. He tries to process the disturbing reality of this 1,000-year biological evolution staring back. Those massive dark eyes evolved out of absolute necessity to capture minimal sunlight available there. That strange dark orange skin developed as a biological shield against relentless cosmic radiation storms. Those frail and skinny bones are the direct result of living under incredibly weak gravity. The artificial intelligence did not make a mistake when rendering this terrifying evolutionary survival mechanism. It simply calculated the brutal physiological toll required to survive outside our comfortable atmospheric bubble. This fragile creature is the absolute pinnacle of human adaptation required for another hostile planet. Caleb suddenly realizes that this distant descendant will never experience the simple joys of Earth. This strange being could never survive the crushing gravity of our beautiful homeworld anymore. They will never gather around a warm wooden table to celebrate a traditional Thanksgiving dinner. They will never feel the comforting warmth of a golden sun under a bright blue sky. The realization hits him hard that conquering the stars demands sacrificing our fundamental human identity. His glorious American dream of space exploration suddenly morphs into a quiet tragedy of permanent exile. What happened next inside his mind will completely surprise anyone who romanticizes interstellar space travel. He slowly closes the laptop and stares blankly into the comforting darkness of his room. The familiar sound of distant city traffic flowing through California suddenly feels like a tremendous privilege. Why did we ever assume that the universe would simply accommodate our fragile biological vessels? He looks down at his own sturdy hands and feels the dense weight of his bones. This perfectly engineered anatomy took millions of years to forge under the gentle embrace of Earth. We naively treat other planets like empty neighborhoods waiting for us to build new suburban houses. We foolishly believe our powerful rockets and brilliant minds can easily overcome basic natural laws forever. But the cold vacuum of space does not care about our extraordinary ambition or grand intelligence. It demands a brutal physiological tax that fundamentally alters everything, making us distinctly and beautifully human. Caleb understands now that sending his bloodline to Mars means essentially destroying his own genetic legacy. The very concept of 1,000 years of progress suddenly looks exactly like a biological prison. Is this horrifying physical transformation truly the ultimate price we must pay for galactic immortality? This terrifying thought completely shatters the optimistic science fiction narratives he consumed throughout his childhood. He realizes that true space exploration is not about boldly going where no man has gone. It is actually about transforming into something completely unrecognizable just to endure the hostile alien dirt. The bright blue sky of an American afternoon now feels like an incredibly rare cosmic miracle. His great-grandchild will never breathe fresh air without relying upon a ventilation life support system. The heavy silence of the dormitory room forces Caleb to confront this deeply unsettling future reality. He finally grasps the immense invisible power that silently shapes every living creature across the universe. We are merely temporary passengers trapped within a deeply unforgiving and relentlessly hostile cosmic environment. When we look up at the night sky, we see a big old galaxy full of endless possibilities. It is tempting to view the cosmos as our rightful inheritance and our ultimate grand biological destiny. We stare at that red dot in the sky and imagine building glorious new cities across its surface. Our ambition makes us feel like invincible conquerors ready to claim a vast and empty cosmic frontier. Let us accept for a moment that our rocket technology perfectly delivers us to that distant alien world. But here is where it gets interesting, regarding our true nature as fragile and vulnerable biological creatures. We are not metallic machines or indestructible gods engineered to survive the harsh vacuum of deep space. We are essentially like a delicate, rare orchid that can only bloom under incredibly specific and stable conditions. If you change the temperature or the atmospheric pressure just a little bit, that beautiful flower immediately dies. Our bodies remain perfectly tuned to the exact gravity and magnetic protection of our comfortable blue home planet. So let us imagine what happens the moment you step out onto that freezing red Martian dirt today. The surface gravity on Mars is only about 38% of the heavy pull you experience on Earth. Why might that seemingly minor physical difference become a terrifying death sentence for our grand interstellar exploration dreams? Your biology operates as a highly efficient system that aggressively discards whatever physical traits it does not need. Without the daily struggle against heavy gravity, your skeleton fundamentally forgets exactly how to stay strong and dense. Now listen carefully, because this invisible enemy operates slowly but relentlessly across every single generation that follows us. Your bones will gradually dissolve, and your thick muscles will slowly wither away into terribly weak biological structures. The human body stops investing energy into maintaining a heavy skeletal armor that the Martian environment never demands. Within a few short centuries, our descendants would transform into frail creatures completely incapable of any heavy lifting. They would become towering but terrifyingly fragile silhouettes drifting like tired ghosts across the desolate red desert landscapes. Yet the devastating physical effects of low gravity are truly only half of the massive biological nightmare waiting. What exactly happens when we expose that withering rare orchid to the merciless cosmic radiation of deep space? Earth provides a massive magnetic bubble that safely deflects dangerous solar flares and violent cosmic rays away from us. Mars tragically lost its planetary magnetic shield billions of years ago, leaving its barren surface completely exposed forever. Any living organism standing on that planet is immediately subjected to a constant invisible bombardment from the sky. But the real secret is how this relentless cosmic radiation attacks the core of your unique human identity. These high-energy particles act like millions of microscopic bullets, violently tearing straight through your fragile biological tissues constantly. They aggressively shred your DNA sequences, causing catastrophic cellular mutations and practically guaranteeing a massive spike in cancers. Your complex genetic code is basically being ripped apart faster than your fragile organic body can possibly repair. Over 1,000 years, this invisible cosmic fire would inevitably scramble the human genome into something completely unrecognizable. How do we resolve these apparent contradictions between our boundless spacefaring ambition and our pathetic biological physical limits? Are we actually going to exist in 1,000 years as the exact same proud species we are today? The harsh truth is that Mars is never going to be a simple new neighborhood for human beings. You cannot just put on a shiny spacesuit and blindly pretend that you belong in a deadly environment indefinitely. It acts as a brutal and unforgiving sculptor that will violently carve away everything making us biologically human today. Unless we can find a radical biological solution, this unforgiving alien world will simply erase our entire physical existence. Let's imagine a crucial boardroom overlooking the San Francisco skyline on a brisk Tuesday morning. Dr. Evelyn stands confidently before a table of the most aggressive venture capitalists in Silicon Valley. These powerful billionaires are entirely prepared to write blank checks for the next grand mechanical marvel. They genuinely expect her to unveil some sleek, revolutionary exoskeleton that looks exactly like a Hollywood movie prop. They desperately want titanium plating, advanced life support systems, and massive rockets to conquer the red dust. Instead of comfortably feeding their mechanical fantasies, Evelyn calmly reaches out and turns off the glowing spaceship presentation. She replaces the familiar schematic of a starship with a massive, incredibly complex map of the human genome. The glowing DNA sequences twist and shatter across the enormous screen in front of the silent room. She tells them to forget about the gleaming rockets and the expensive carbon fiber spacesuits. Those mechanical toys are merely temporary metal coffins if the biological vessel inside them is fundamentally broken. Here is where it gets interesting for anyone obsessed with surviving the brutal reality of deep space exploration. Let's think about what happens when you rely entirely on machines to keep a fragile earthly organism alive. Mechanical systems will inevitably degrade, break down, and eventually fail under the relentless punishment of alien environments. You cannot simply bolt a metal plate onto a soft human body and expect it to survive 1,000 years. The raw hostility of deep space will always find a microscopic weakness in your thickest mechanical armor. We have spent decades aggressively pouring billions of dollars into building better cages for our fragile bodies. How do we resolve these apparent contradictions between our towering mechanical ambition and our pathetic biological fragility? Evelyn stares down the wealthiest investors in America and delivers a violently uncomfortable piece of absolute truth. If we actually want to build an interstellar species, the core engineering must happen on a molecular level. We must completely stop trying to build better spacesuits and start building fundamentally better human beings. The venture capitalists shift uncomfortably in their leather chairs as the heavy reality slowly sinks in. The true frontier of space exploration is not rocket science, but rather aggressive and irreversible genetic modification. We are not upgrading the vehicle, we are fundamentally upgrading the fragile passenger inside the vehicle. Now listen carefully, because this specific detail changes the entire trajectory of human civilization as we know it. She points directly at the glowing, artificially spliced genetic sequences illuminating the dark boardroom walls. To survive that brutal environment, we have to start editing the genes of our unborn children today. We cannot wait until we are millions of miles away to realize our biology is fatally inadequate. This requires fundamentally rewriting the core biological instruction manual that has guided human evolution for countless millennia. We must intentionally strip away the biological heritage that ties us exclusively to this comfortable blue planet. The room erupts into a quiet chaos of ethical objections and frantic whispers about massive regulatory hurdles. These are people comfortable with extreme financial risk, but they are absolutely terrified of playing God with human DNA. Evelyn calmly reminds them that space does not care about our earthly morals or our regulatory frameworks. You cannot politely negotiate with severe radiation, and you certainly cannot bribe the crushing gravity. Survival demands that we become the ruthless designers of our own extreme biological evolution. Let's accept that the universe is inherently hostile to the exact biological shape we currently inhabit. If we stubbornly hold on to our current biological form, will we simply become expensive fossils on foreign dirt? The only logical path forward is to radically dismantle the human genome and rebuild it for the stars. We are talking about deliberately cutting and splicing human embryos with incredibly strange biological traits. But the real secret is that this radical transformation has already begun in quiet laboratories around the world. This is not some distant science fiction concept, but a mandatory requirement for our immediate survival. She leaves them staring at a terrifying future that looks nothing like the heroic posters of the past century. Is it truly a victory if the creature that conquers the stars is no longer strictly human? The billionaires suddenly realize they are not safely investing in a traditional commercial space journey. They are being asked to quietly fund the deliberate extinction of our current biological baseline. The ultimate spaceship is not constructed of forged steel, but of heavily mutated flesh and bone. Evelyn slowly packs up her tablet, leaving the boardroom suspended in a suffocating cloud of existential dread. We must permanently abandon our original humanity if we actually want to save our fragile species. For decades, we have stubbornly placed our ultimate faith in impenetrable mechanical exosuits and pressurized habitats. We genuinely believed that heavy engineering would be enough to shield our fragile biology from Martian hostility. Here is where it gets interesting, because that entire mechanical approach is completely backward and ultimately doomed. The true weapon for long-term cosmic survival does not involve forging stronger steel or building thicker glass. Instead, the ultimate solution requires us to look inward and completely rewrite the fundamental code of life. Let's accept that any machine we build will eventually break down over a timescale of a millennium. Let's accept that relying on artificial life support for 1,000 years is just a prolonged suicide mission. Let's accept the terrifying reality that we cannot just wear protection against the brutal environment of Mars. We must fundamentally become the protection ourselves by radically altering our own internal biological architecture from scratch. This means abandoning our natural evolution and taking complete control over the genetic destiny of our species. The brilliant minds working on this problem did not look to advanced robotics or artificial intelligence for answers. They looked at a microscopic survivor already living right here on Earth, called the humble water bear. Tardigrades possess an almost magical biological ability to withstand extreme radiation, freezing temperatures, and the vacuum of space. Scientists realized that splicing specific tardigrade genes directly into human embryos could theoretically grant us those exact immunities. By weaving this alien-like resilience into our own DNA, we create a biological shield stronger than any metal. This radical procedure would fundamentally alter the biological blueprint that has defined humanity for hundreds of thousands of years. We are talking about ushering in an unprecedented era of biological chimeras designed specifically for the Martian frontier. The first generation of successful colonists would not technically be fully human in the way we currently understand it. They would be a manufactured hybrid species carrying the genetic material of microscopic extremophiles deep inside their cells. Their bodies would intuitively know how to repair massive radiation damage that would instantly liquefy our normal organs. Their engineered skin and mutated bone structures would naturally adapt to the harsh reality of a frozen desert. This is the deeply unsettling truth about colonizing the stars that nobody ever mentions in those polished presentations. Imagine the sheer audacity required to sit in a laboratory and intentionally erase millions of years of natural selection. We are playing God with our own descendants, treating the sacred human genome like a simple software update. But the real secret is that the universe does not care about our sentimental attachment to our original bodies. The cosmos is a brutally unforgiving environment that actively destroys any organism clinging stubbornly to its fragile terrestrial origins. If we refuse to adapt through aggressive genetic modification, the Great Filter will simply wipe us out without hesitation. We have to deliberately embrace our own physical destruction in order to secure a permanent foothold in the galaxy. Are we truly prepared to slice apart our own humanity just to buy a few more millennia of survival? We are not just sending brave explorers across the dark void to conquer a dead and empty rock. We are literally manufacturing genuine extraterrestrials out of our own flesh and blood inside cold laboratory incubation chambers. When a mother looks into the crib on Mars, will she even recognize the creature staring back at her? The child will possess enlarged dark eyes to capture faint sunlight and an unnaturally thick, radiation-resistant outer skin. It will breathe differently, metabolize differently, and survive in conditions that would immediately suffocate its own ancient ancestors. Every single biological instinct we currently possess tells us that this engineered offspring is something profoundly alien and terrifying. Yet, this grotesque biological mutation is absolutely necessary if we want to ensure the continued existence of human consciousness. Let's accept for a moment that we actually pull off this impossible biological and engineering miracle. We successfully modify a new generation of resilient humans capable of thriving under that thin Martian atmosphere. Our brilliant scientists at MIT and aggressive venture capitalists in Silicon Valley finally celebrate their historic victory. We have conquered the red planet and successfully expanded the great American pioneer spirit across the solar system. The history books will forever remember this monumental achievement as the absolute pinnacle of our remarkable biological prowess. We will proudly declare ourselves the undisputed masters of the vast and incredibly unforgiving cosmic ocean. For the next 1,000 years, these genetically modified descendants will build towering cities beneath the pale Martian sun. They will seamlessly adapt to a strange world where gravity is merely 38% of what we experience today. Imagine watching a casual basketball game where every single high school player can effortlessly leap 15 feet into the air. Their bodies will naturally elongate like incredibly fragile glass statues, shaped by this remarkably gentle gravitational pull. Human biology will efficiently and ruthlessly discard all the dense muscle mass and heavy bone structure required on our demanding planet. They will become an entirely new breed of ethereal beings perfectly optimized for their dusty red alien neighborhood. Now listen carefully, because here is exactly where the glorious dream of interplanetary colonization transforms into a visceral existential nightmare. We intuitively assume that these advanced future spacefaring descendants will eventually return to Earth for a triumphant family reunion. We romantically imagine them visiting our bustling metropolitan cities and marveling at the vast blue oceans of their ancestral homeworld. We eagerly picture a beautiful historical moment where two distinct branches of humanity finally embrace one another. We naturally expect them to walk peacefully among us and share incredible stories of their monumental architectural achievements across the void. But the brutal laws of physics simply do not care about our sentimental desire for heartwarming planetary homecomings. If a 1,000-year Martian descendant ever attempted to step out of a spacecraft onto a California beach, tragedy would strike. The incredibly familiar gravity that comfortably grounds us right now would instantly become an invisible and unimaginably heavy crushing weapon. Their remarkably delicate skeletal structure, completely unaccustomed to our massive planetary gravitational field, would immediately shatter under their own body weight. These magnificent pioneer children of the solar system would completely collapse before taking a single step upon their beautiful ancestral soil. Our wonderfully welcoming home planet would effectively act like a ruthless industrial trash compactor, mercilessly crushing a delicate aluminum soda can. The incredibly simple act of drawing a single breath of our thick ocean air would become absolutely impossible for them. Their drastically weakened respiratory muscles simply could not expand their fragile chests against the tremendous downward pressure of Earth's heavy atmosphere. They would literally suffocate while lying hopelessly paralyzed on the exact same fertile soil that originally birthed their fearless human ancestors. The brilliant gravitational force that currently holds our vast glorious oceans in place would essentially become a terrifying executioner for them. The profound psychological weight of this strictly one-way evolutionary journey is completely absent from our optimistic modern venture capital pitch decks. We enthusiastically sell our ambitious American college students on the thrilling romantic idea of becoming the very first interstellar immortal species. But nobody ever dares to mention that crossing this tremendous biological threshold completely burns down the only bridge safely leading back home. We must deeply wonder what happens to a sophisticated society when they fully realize their original creators deliberately condemned them to permanent exile. Why did we blindly believe that the indifferent universe would allow us to conquer it without extracting a truly devastating biological toll? This terrifying physical reality means that establishing a permanent foothold on Mars is absolutely not a glorious expansion of human civilization. It is actually the deliberate construction of an inescapable planetary prison floating tens of millions of miles away in the freezing dark. By aggressively engineering our beloved children to survive that hostile alien environment, we are permanently locking the doors to their ancestral home. We are essentially handing them the magnificent stars, while simultaneously stealing away the fundamental gravity of their own profound human origins. They will eventually look through their highly advanced space telescopes at our pale blue dot and silently know they can never return. The incredibly beautiful natural cradle of humanity will remain forever violently off-limits to these highly evolved intelligent architects of the Martian Empire. To them, the Earth will not be a welcoming mother, but rather a terrifying cosmic death trap of inescapable, crushing downward pressure. Is the ultimate philosophical price of becoming a truly multi-planetary species simply accepting the permanent loss of our vibrant native homeworld? How can we proudly celebrate conquering the vast galaxy if the spectacular victory inherently requires absolute banishment from the planet that forged us? Let us imagine the ultimate goal that drives our obsessive push toward the stars and the endless void. We constantly tell ourselves this comforting story about preserving the human race and spreading our legacy across the big old galaxy. We desperately want to build a grand cosmic backup drive for our fragile species, just in case things go terribly wrong here. But here is where it gets interesting, regarding our romanticized vision of this monumental interstellar journey. We must critically ask whether we are actually saving our species or simply telling ourselves an elaborate lie to feel better about leaving. Our deeply ingrained American dream of pioneering a brand new frontier might be hiding a much darker biological reality. We naturally consider our current biological form to be the absolute pinnacle of an incredibly long and arduous evolutionary process. The idea of intentionally slicing up our genetic code and mixing it with microscopic alien traits feels deeply unnatural to us. It feels like a massive betrayal of everything that fundamentally defines our shared emotional experience on this comfortable blue planet. How do we ethically justify erasing the exact biological blueprint that successfully built our entire modern global civilization? We are incredibly proud of our humanity, yet that exact pride might just become the heavy anchor that ultimately sinks us. We want to carry our earthly nostalgia into the cosmos, but the universe simply does not care about our feelings. Now listen carefully, because the vast cosmos presents us with a deeply uncomfortable and terrifying moral ultimatum today. If we stubbornly refuse to fundamentally change our biological structure, the unforgiving Martian environment will eventually wipe us out completely. We face a massive existential bottleneck where clinging to our original human purity guarantees our absolute and silent destruction forever. Nature has always operated on a ruthless principle, where only the most aggressively adaptable species get to continue their genetic lineage. We are standing right at the precipice of a great filter, and overcoming it requires a horrifying collective decision. Are we truly brave enough to permanently sacrifice the very biological essence that makes us who we are today? What happens next will surprise you as we finally confront the absolute truth of our grand spacefaring ambitions. We are absolutely not traveling millions of miles to Mars to save Homo sapiens from a tragic cosmic extinction. The real secret is that we are traveling there to actively execute our own biological obsolescence on a massive planetary scale. To ensure the delicate spark of human consciousness actually survives, we must intentionally orchestrate the extinction of our original form. We have to willingly kill off the pure human lineage to clear the path for something far more resilient. Could it be that true interstellar survival actually demands the ultimate sacrifice of everything we currently recognize as distinctly human? We are essentially forced to become the brutal architects of our own biological demise just to win the cosmic lottery. By fundamentally splicing our DNA and submitting to the brutal Martian gravity, we give birth to a totally new species entirely. Homo Martis will eventually look back across the dark void at Earth, not with longing, but with quiet historical detachment. They will view us not as their equals, but as ancient, fragile ancestors who made the ultimate heartbreaking evolutionary sacrifice. We simply become the necessary biological stepping stones, willingly fading into the shadows so our engineered children can reach the stars. Does a civilization truly survive if the creatures carrying its memory no longer look or feel anything like us? Let us accept this profound philosophical burden as the absolute ultimate price of admission to the wider cosmic theater. Our legacy will not be preserved in fragile bones or vulnerable lungs, but in the enduring continuity of our shared consciousness. We must graciously step aside and let the pure human form become nothing more than a brilliant closed chapter in history. If we truly want our descendants to thrive across the galaxy, we must first embrace our own intentional biological ending. Let's bring this entire cosmic debate back to a quiet dorm room in sunny California today. Caleb is still sitting in the cold glow of his computer monitor at Stanford University. The cooling fans of his expensive laptop whisper softly against the deafening silence of midnight. He stares blankly at the highly detailed biological simulation hovering brightly on his flat screen. The strange creature staring back at him does not look like a traditional American space hero. It possesses incredibly large dark eyes and thick orange skin stretched over a very fragile skeleton. Is this terrifying biological chimera truly the ultimate destiny of our grand multiplanetary ambitions right now? Here is where it gets interesting when we confront the absolute limits of our current scientific knowledge. We simply do not know exactly how this radical genetic transformation will ultimately play out over millennia. The complex science of editing human embryos for deep space survival is still entirely theoretical and unproven today. We are essentially fumbling blindly in the dark with massive biological forces we barely understand right now. Every brilliant scientist in Silicon Valley is merely guessing about the distant future of extreme human evolution. Nobody can perfectly predict how a modified brain will process extreme isolation on a dead alien planet. Will these extreme biological modifications inevitably strip away the very emotions that make us distinctly human beings? Let's accept the incredibly uncomfortable reality that our current biological form is just a temporary evolutionary vessel. We have spent thousands of years romantically looking up at the beautiful and expansive starry night sky. We always quietly assumed we would carry our familiar faces and earthly cultures to those distant outer worlds. But actually, the brutal physical laws of the universe demand a completely different kind of ultimate biological sacrifice. The majestic cosmos simply does not care about our profound emotional attachment to our original genetic code today. It ruthlessly demands absolute physical adaptation from any fragile species bold enough to leave its native home planet. Caleb leans much closer to the glowing screen and carefully locks eyes with his theoretical Martian descendant today. He realizes that this bizarre alien creature is the only way his human bloodline survives the cosmic void. To conquer the infinite dark galaxy, we must actively participate in the total erasure of our own species. The triumphant biological astronauts of the distant future will look back at us as primitive biological stepping stones. They might not even comprehend the simple earthly joy of a warm summer breeze in sunny California anymore. Are we truly prepared to permanently sacrifice our fundamental humanity just to conquer a lifeless, dusty red rock? What happens next will surprise you because it places the ultimate philosophical burden directly onto your heavy shoulders. The great terrifying silence of the dark universe might simply be waiting for us to make this difficult choice. Perhaps every advanced civilization faces this exact terrifying biological threshold before they can truly colonize the distant stars. We are currently standing at the absolute edge of a dark and fundamentally transformative cosmic abyss right now. The next logical evolutionary step requires us to willingly destroy the magical mirror that beautifully reflects our current selves. Would you accept completely throwing away your human identity in exchange for a place among the stars?